Something changed after 15 years of marriage. The shift was subtle at first, so subtle, in fact, that I convinced myself it was nothing. Just a phase. People go through things, right? Stress, burnout, maybe a midlife hiccup. But little things started stacking up, and eventually, I couldn't ignore them. It was the phone at first. Night after night, Michelle sat curled on the far end of the couch, eyes glued to her screen. We used to laugh together at stupid memes or TikToks, pass the phone back and forth like teenagers. Now, it stayed clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Always angled away from me. Always with the screen brightness dimmed low. Whenever I walked into the room, she'd click the screen off, too fast. Too natural, like she'd practiced. I tried to brush it off. "Hey," I said one night, easing down beside her. "What's so interesting over there?" She didn't look up. Just checking work emails. I blinked at the time glowing from the TV screen. 11:04 p.m. on a Saturday. "You guys doing midnight surgeries now?" I joked, trying to sound light. She gave a tight smile, but didn't answer. Her thumb hovered near the side button of her phone. Michelle worked in healthcare administration. Long hours, yes. Stressful? Definitely. But she'd never been on call like this. It used to be all work stayed at work. Now it had somehow crept into our bed, our dinners, our weekends. The biggest change wasn't even the silence. It was how hard it had become to reach her. Like there was a door between us that hadn't been there before, and I didn't have the key. We used to talk about everything and nothing. Conversations that spiraled from movie plots to childhood memories to made-up inside jokes that made no sense to anyone but us. Those moments were gone, replaced by short, clipped exchanges about groceries and bills. The kind of stuff you talk about with a roommate, not a spouse. And the sex. God, the sex. We went from several times a week to maybe once a month, if that. When I tried to bring it up, she had a whole drawer of reasons ready. Too tired. Work's been nonstop. Got a migraine. Can we not talk about this right now? But the reasons always ended the same way. Her turning over, pulling the covers to her chin, and me staring at the ceiling, wide awake. Then came the announcement about Vegas. We were cleaning up after dinner. She was rinsing plates, I was drying. "Oh, by the way," she said, not looking at me. "The girls are planning a trip to Vegas next month." I paused mid-wipe. "Vegas?" "Yeah, over the long weekend. For days. Since when do you guys take trips?" She gave a little shrug, still focused on the plate in her hands. "We've been talking about it for a while. Just finally decided to book." This was the first I'd heard of it. "Who's going?" She rattled off a few names. Coworkers I remembered from hospital fundraisers and holiday events. I nodded along until she said one that didn't sound familiar. "Wait, who's Melissa? I don't think I've met her." She hesitated, just a flicker. "New hire in billing. You'll meet her at the holiday party." "Uh-huh." I kept my tone casual, but something crawled under my skin. Over the next couple of weeks, the changes came faster. 3 new outfits appeared in our closet. I found the tags stuffed deep in the kitchen trash, under coffee grounds and eggshells. Not her usual taste, short, tight, plunging necklines. Not office wear, that was for sure. One afternoon, she came home from the salon with golden highlights and a new cut, shorter, sleeker, styled in a way that screamed intention. She looked stunning, no doubt. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this version of Michelle wasn't the one I'd been living with for the past decade and a half. And the workouts. She'd always been relatively active, but now she was on a mission. High-intensity training videos played in the living room at 6 a.m. A new yoga mat. New gear. Meal prepping like she was training for something. Her body changed quickly. Leaner, more defined. She looked incredible. But the change was sharper, more focused, like she was sculpting not just her figure, but a whole new version of herself. One I didn't recognize. More than I'd seen in years. When I complimented the changes, her hair, the outfits, the way she'd been working out, she barely acknowledged me. "Wow," I said one evening, watching her walk past in a fitted dress I hadn't seen before. "You look amazing. Really, you've been glowing lately." She paused briefly, gave a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said, "Thanks," before disappearing into the bathroom. That was it. No blush, no playful flirt, not even a return compliment. Just, "Thanks." Like I was a stranger commenting on her shoes in a grocery store. The night before she left for Vegas, I tried again. "You sure you don't want me to drive you to the airport in the morning?" She didn't even look up from packing. "No need. We're all meeting at Belinda's and taking an Uber from there." "Okay, well, I can at least drop you at Belinda's." "No, really. It's too early. You need your sleep. You've got work." She zipped up her suitcase and stood it upright near the door. That was my cue. The conversation was over. The next morning, she gave me a quick peck on the cheek. "Love you. See you in a few days," she said, keys already in hand. I stood in the doorway and watched her pull out of the driveway. I don't know why, but it felt final, like something was closing, not just a door. The first day, she sent a few pictures. Group shots in front of the Bellagio fountains. A blurry photo of a giant cocktail. A selfie with 3 of her coworkers, all smiling wide, eyes glossy. "Looks like fun," I texted. "Yeah, so much fun," she replied, but she never picked up when I called. Just texts. Short ones. "Hey, tried calling. Just wanted to hear your voice." No reply for 2 hours. "Sorry, heading to a show. Talk soon." I told myself not to overthink it. She's with friends. Let her have fun. But by day 3, the pictures stopped. The messages slowed down. When I asked if everything was okay, it took hours to get a response. All good. Signal bad in casino, she said. I stared at my phone for a long time. Something about that message, so generic. No smiley faces, no hearts, no miss you. On the day she was supposed to return, I sent 3 texts asking about her arrival time so I could pick her up. No response. Finally, around 6 p.m., a single message. Got a ride with Belinda. See you at home. When she walked through the door that night, she looked off. Tired, sure, but also something else. Her makeup was smudged, like she'd just woken from a nap she didn't really sleep through. Her eyes didn't light up when she saw me. No hug, no kiss, just a soft, hey, as she pulled her suitcase inside. I offered to help her unpack, but she waved me off. The suitcase sat there for 2 days like some forgotten guest. When I finally saw her open it, I watched from the hallway. She moved quickly, pulling out a few items, lingerie I didn't recognize, a dress I'd never seen, tossing them straight into the laundry basket without a glance. I waited until she came downstairs. How was the trip? Fun, but exhausting, she said, flopping onto the couch. Those girls can party. She didn't elaborate. No stories, no funny mishaps, no you won't believe what happened kind of excitement. What did you guys do? She shrugged. Just the usual Vegas stuff. Like, you know, shows, gambling, drinking. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. I nodded slowly, watching her sink deeper into the cushions. That night, when I came to bed, I found the guest room door closed. I knocked softly. Everything okay? Just really tired. I think I need a night to stretch out and get some real sleep. I stood there, hands still on the doorknob, listening to silence on the other side. And that was the start of the new pattern. Distant, cold, routine conversations, going to bed at different times, short replies over dinner. No teasing, no laughter, no spark. When intimacy finally resumed, it felt off, like kissing a stranger, touching someone who didn't want to be touched, but felt obligated to say yes. She didn't moan, didn't whisper my name like she used to. Her eyes were closed the whole time, as if she was going through motions. It was Thursday when I noticed the new contact. A name kept flashing on Michelle's phone, Tom. I first caught it when she was texting on the couch. Her body shifted ever so slightly when I walked in, angling the screen away from view. I caught a glimpse of the name before the screen dimmed. When I asked casually who Tom was, she barely paused. Work project, she said, not even looking up. Something from Central Billing we're collaborating on. The explanation sounded smooth, automatic. Too automatic. Over the next few days, Tom showed up a lot. Late-night texts that made her smile slightly before she quickly wiped her expression away. The screen brightness was turned way down. The phone, which once sat openly on counters or nightstands, was now always face down or in her pocket. I tried to ignore it, tried to trust her, but our weekend plans started falling through more and more. I'm grabbing drinks with the girls, she'd say. Again? I asked one Friday night. We had tickets for that jazz thing, remember? She looked apologetic, but it didn't reach her eyes. I forgot. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I nodded slowly, pretending to believe her, pretending it didn't feel like I was slowly being erased. Still, I kept quiet. I told myself I needed more than suspicion before I said anything. Then the email came. Subject, about your wife and my husband in Vegas. From Natalie. I stared at it, unsure whether to even open it. My hand hovered over the mouse like it was a trigger, but curiosity and fear got the better of me. I don't know how to say this delicately, so I'll be direct. My husband Tom and your wife were together in Vegas 3 weeks ago. This wasn't their first time. I have proof and think you deserve to know. I can meet you to show you everything. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. My heart stopped cold. Natalie. I didn't recognize the name, but the email contained specifics, the exact weekend dates, the name of the hotel Michelle had casually mentioned once and never again. I hadn't told anyone outside my circle about those details. This wasn't a prank. I responded immediately. When can we meet? Today if possible. Anywhere public. Just want to see what you've got. She wrote back within the hour. Suggested a coffee shop halfway between our workplaces. Neutral ground. I showed up early, too anxious to sit still, sipping at coffee I'd barely tasted. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for someone I'd never met. Then she walked in, tall, poised, dressed in a neat navy suit. Her expression was serious, as if she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. You must be Natalie, I said, rising from my chair. She nodded, giving a small, polite smile. Kenneth, thanks for meeting me. We shook hands. She sat and placed a manila folder on the table between us like it weighed 50 pounds. Before I show you this, she said quietly, I just want you to know, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I verified everything. Hired a private investigator weeks ago. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. She opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It hit me like a punch to the gut. There was Michelle, unmistakably her, stepping into a hotel room with a man. 11:42 p.m., time-stamped. Friday night of the Vegas trip. That's Tom, Natalie said quietly. My husband. I stared at the photo, heart sinking. She slid another one over. Michelle and Tom in the hotel bar. He had his hand on her thigh. They were laughing. She was leaning in like he'd just told a secret. Another photo. By the elevator. They were kissing, his hand under her skirt. I sat there stunned, the low hum of the coffee shop fading into nothing as Natalie placed the final photograph on the table. Michelle and Tom, lips locked in front of an elevator, her hand resting on his chest like it belonged there. Natalie took a slow breath, clearly trying to keep it together. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she gathered the photos and slid them back into the manila folder. Tom works for a medical supply company that contracts with your wife's hospital, she said. They met at a conference last year. The one in Denver. Ring a bell? I did remember Michelle mentioning a conference. She'd come back tired, but different. Lighter, in a way that didn't sit right at the time. I told myself it was just the change of scenery, a break from routine. They've been meeting up whenever possible since then, Natalie continued. My PI followed him for weeks. The Vegas trip? That was planned around his so-called business conference. It was never about work. It was about them having an excuse. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of printed phone records, pointing to a column of numbers. That one there, that's his personal cell, not the company-issued one. Your wife's number shows up hundreds of times. Early mornings, late nights, lunchtimes. Some days they texted every few minutes. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just nodded slowly, jaw clenched so tight, I felt my molars grinding. She slid over another sheet, credit card statements. These are charges from hotels in your city. All of them on days she told you she was working late, or covering a shift for someone else. Always the same pattern. Same hotels, rotating Thursdays. Same excuses. The blood drained from my face. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. And the women from the Vegas trip? She added. 2 of them are having affairs too. My PI found out. They all cover for each other. Girls' nights. Weekend brunches. Fake group selfies. It's a network of lies. I flipped through the papers. Receipts. Timestamps. Photos. Hotel names. Text logs. All of it lining up like puzzle pieces from a nightmare I didn't know I was living in. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated. Finally, I looked up at her and asked, voice low, why are you telling me this? She sat back in her chair and folded her hands in her lap, exhaling slowly. Because I'd want someone to tell me, she said. And because I'm divorcing Tom. You deserve to know the truth before making any more life decisions based on lies. She pushed the folder toward me. Copies for you. Originals are with my lawyer. I stared at it for a beat, then reached out with a shaking hand and pulled it toward me. It felt like I was taking ownership of something I didn't want but couldn't ignore. Before she stood to leave, Natalie added one more thing. The PI confirmed they've been meeting at the Camden Hotel every other Thursday. That's tomorrow. She looked at me, her expression softening just slightly. I'm sorry. I met her eyes for the first time since she walked in. Thank you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I thank you. My drive home passed in a blur. The city lights flickered past, but I barely saw them. The folder Natalie had given me sat on the passenger seat like a live grenade, its quiet presence louder than any siren or engine. Every time I glanced at it, my stomach twisted. I didn't want it to be real. I wanted to toss it out the window, forget what I'd seen, what I now knew. But there was no one knowing it. At home, I placed the folder gently on the kitchen table, as if opening it too quickly would let the damage spill out and infect the walls of my house. I went through every photo, every timestamp, every receipt again, this time slower, methodically, like I needed to burn it into my memory, just in case she tried to make me doubt what was real. Dates, times, locations, all matching perfectly with the gaps in Michelle's stories. Those late nights, last-minute cover shifts, those suspicious girls' trips that always seemed to have a convenient reason. I pulled up our joint bank accounts on my laptop, then opened the credit card statements. And there it was, withdrawals for cash before every one of her work dinners or weekend getaways. Small charges at convenience stores near the Camden Hotel. Uber rides to addresses I didn't recognize, mostly on Thursdays. Every line item was like a quiet confession she didn't realize she was making. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, my phone buzzed. Michelle, work dinner with the team. I'll be home as soon as I can. I stared at the message for a long second, then opened the location sharing app we both had installed a year ago when we traveled separately for a while. I tapped her icon. She wasn't at any restaurant I recognized. She was near the Camden Hotel. Of course she was. I stood up, gripping the back of the kitchen chair. Part of me wanted to drive over there, walk into the lobby, and watch her panic when she saw me. Part of me wanted to blow the whole thing wide open. But then, logic took hold. Not yet. I needed to protect myself, get legal advice, separate finances, gather everything before she could twist the narrative or wipe away the evidence. I wasn't just dealing with a broken heart. I was dealing with 15 years of entanglement. Property, assets, retirement funds. I backed everything up to cloud storage, photos, texts, account activity, her location pings, creating folders with labels like Evidence A, hotel visits, credit statements. Cold, organized, necessary. A little after 10, the front door opened. I sat at the kitchen island, my laptop still open but the screen dark. She walked in with her coat over her arm, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, a little too lightly. Hey babe, sorry it ran late. I nodded. No worries. She started unpacking a to-go container. They had this amazing pasta. I got some for you. I noticed the scent first, an expensive cologne I'd never smelled before, something musky and warm. She must have been close to him. Maybe even hugged him goodbye. Maybe more. How was your day? She asked, walking over to the fridge. I looked at her, really looked at her. The ease in her voice. The smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The practiced normalcy. Enlightening, I said. She didn't even pause. Didn't catch the weight in my voice. Just nodded and kept moving like it was any other Thursday night. Later, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling. She fell asleep quickly, as always. I could hear her soft breathing, the rise and fall of her chest. Her wedding ring caught a glint of the moonlight. I didn't feel anger in that moment. I didn't feel anything. Just hollow. Empty. 15 years together, and all I could think was, everything is tainted by her betrayal. I didn't sleep one bit. I just lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, her breathing soft beside me, the weight of betrayal thick in the air like smoke. I kept replaying every moment, every red flag I'd brushed aside. Too trusting, too willing to believe in us. The sudden obsession with the gym. New lingerie that never found its way into our bedroom. Last-minute work events that couldn't be verified. Hours gone, with vague stories that unraveled if I looked too closely. And most of all, the silence. The growing distance between us. The way her eyes started looking past me, like I was background noise. By morning, I had made my decision. No more pretending. No more denial. I was done being the last to know. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the soft light seep through the curtains. She stirred, mumbled something incoherent, and rolled away from me. I stood, grabbed my phone, and walked quietly out of the room. I called in sick to work. First time I'd ever done that without an actual fever or broken limb. Everything okay? My manager asked. Not really, I said, voice flat. I've got something personal I need to take care of. All right, take the time you need. Click. The lawyer's office opened at 8. I was in the parking lot by 7:30, coffee in hand, folder on the passenger seat again. This time, my armor. I stood outside the glass doors until the receptionist arrived, unlocking with a polite smile that faded when she saw my expression. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, stepping inside. But I need immediate guidance on this divorce stuff. She didn't ask more, just nodded and led me to a waiting area. 10 minutes later, I was in a private room with a divorce attorney named Claire DeMarco. She wore a dark blue blazer and glasses, her tone professional but not cold. Let's take this step by step, she said after reviewing the documents. You've already done the hard part, gathering evidence. That helps us immensely. I nodded. My hands were clenched tightly on the folder in my lap. Step 1, she continued, is to protect your financial position. That means separating accounts, but we don't want to do it in a way that looks vindictive or raises red flags in court. She laid out a clear plan. Open a personal bank account. Transfer half of the joint savings. No more, no less. Leave the joint checking account untouched for now, especially if it's tied to recurring bills. Remove myself from joint credit cards after settling any balances. Pull credit reports to check for hidden accounts. Secure all important legal documents, birth certificates, deeds, insurance, investments, preferably somewhere she couldn't access. I wrote everything down, not because I needed to, but because it gave me something to do with my hands. You're not just preparing for divorce, Claire said. You're building a firewall. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of grief later. I thanked her, shook her hand, and walked straight to the bank. The same teller who'd helped Michelle and me open our joint account years ago smiled when she saw me. How can I help today, Mr. Winslow? I'd like to open a new personal checking and savings account, I said, just under my name. She typed a few things, made a few calls, handed me forms. I transferred exactly half of the savings, no more, no less. Not out of fairness, but strategy. It showed I wasn't trying to be vindictive, just protecting what was mine. I left the checking untouched. Next stop, credit card company. Paid off the balances. Had my name removed from the joint accounts. They asked me why. I just said life changes. I pulled my credit reports in the car, one by one. Nothing unexpected. Thank God, but I still felt better having checked. Then I drove to my office downtown. Locked myself in my storage cabinet and pulled every important document I could think of. Our marriage certificate, property deeds, car titles, health and life insurance policies, tax returns, investment portfolios. I scanned each one, backed them up to an encrypted drive, locked the originals in my file drawer. She wouldn't even think to look here. By early afternoon, my plan was operational. The lawyer had advised patience. Wait until the papers are filed, he'd said, calm and calculated behind his desk. Don't confront her yet. Timing matters. But I couldn't wait. Not with the hotel meetup Natalie had told me about happening that very evening. It took me one phone call to confirm it. Yes, the receptionist said after a brief pause. His room is ready for check-in any time after 3. That was all I needed. I drove home in a trance, methodical now, like I was moving through a checklist of someone else's life. My hands moved faster than my thoughts. I packed a duffel bag with just the essentials, clothes for a week, toiletries, medications, a photo of my parents from their wedding, another of Michelle and me from ours. A few heirlooms that mattered only to me. My father's old watch, a ring my grandmother gave me. She'd never know what was missing. I made sure of that. Then I hit the electronics store. A voice-activated recorder. Small, black, simple. Not for revenge. Not for court. For truth. For closure. The lawyer had confirmed, one-party consent state. She didn't have to know. The truth didn't need her permission. I tested it once in the car, heard my voice echo back through tiny headphones. Clicked it off. Slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket. And then I drove to the hotel. I parked across the street, the building rising against the darkening sky like some sterile monument to lies. My hands tightened on the steering wheel when I saw her car. It pulled in slow, smooth, like she wasn't in any kind of hurry. She parked near the front entrance, checked herself in the mirror, ran fingers through her hair, reapplied lipstick. No guilt. No hesitation. Just confidence. She walked inside. I watched the glass doors shut behind her, then waited. 15 minutes. Enough time for them to settle in. For her to take off her coat. Maybe more. Then I got out. The lobby felt colder than it should. Sterile. Polished tile beneath my shoes, too white lighting above my head. I approached the front desk. A young guy with tight curls and a name tag that said Jordan glanced up with a corporate smile. Good evening, sir, checking in? No, I said, stepping closer. I need to know the room number for Tom Reynolds. He checked in a little while ago. Jordan's smile faltered. I'm afraid I can't. My wife is cheating on me. I interrupted, my voice low but tight. She's meeting him. It's rather urgent. Can you help me, please? He blinked, clearly caught off guard. I don't know what happened after that. Maybe it was the look in my eyes, maybe the tremble in my voice. But something shifted. Tears welled up, and I didn't fight them. I didn't even try. Jordan glanced around, leaned forward, and scribbled something on a sticky note. Room 519. I pulled out my phone. Do you have Cash App? He looked hesitant, then nodded. I sent him $125 on the spot. He never said another word. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in. Hit the button for the 5th floor. The ride felt like hours. The hum of the machinery. The soft chime at each floor. My reflection in the mirrored walls. Blank, pale, jaw tight. I didn't recognize myself. Room 519 was at the end of the hall. I walked slowly, each step heavier than the last. My hand went to the recorder. Clicked it on. 3 deep breaths. Then I knocked. Shuffling sounds. A pause. Then, who is it? A man's voice, muffled. Room service, I said, keeping it steady. The door cracked open, the chain still locked in place. Tom's face appeared. And that's when I saw it. That flicker of recognition. His smug expression melted into fear. Pure, unmistakable fear. He tried to shut the door. My foot hit the threshold before he could. The door slammed against it with a dull thud. We need to talk, I said, calm as death. There was more scrambling inside. I heard movement, quick, panicked. Then her voice. Who is it? She called out. Your husband, I replied. Silence. A long, awful silence. Then came the sound of the chain sliding free. The door opened, and there she was. Michelle, frozen, standing near the bed, partially dressed. The door opened into a scene so cliché it felt surreal. Room service trays littered the table, half-eaten meals congealing under silver domes, a bottle of wine barely touched. Everything I had expected, but the weight of actually seeing it was still a gut punch. Michelle froze near the bed, caught mid-motion, her blouse hanging loosely off one shoulder. Tom stood a few feet behind her, shirtless and stunned, like a deer realizing it's already been hit. How did you find us? He asked, as if it mattered. I didn't respond. He wasn't the point. I focused on her. Your affair partner's wife provided comprehensive evidence, I said, my voice steady, like I'd rehearsed it. 15 years together, and this is what you choose? She didn't deny it. No excuses. No gaslighting. Just stood there pale and silent, a lifetime of trust slipping through her fingers. I've seen the photos. Hotel receipts. Text messages. Everything, I continued. Tom shuffled toward the bathroom, awkwardly pulling on his shirt like modesty could protect him now. Hey, this isn't as bad as it looks, he offered, the oldest lie known to man. I turned slightly and said, I've already filed for divorce. It wasn't true, not yet, but it would be by tomorrow. That was a certainty. Michelle finally found her voice. Can we talk about this privately? She asked, but I shook my head. There's nothing left to discuss. I've moved my things. Separated our finances. The rest can be handled through attorneys. Her shock flickered, morphing into something colder, calculating. You can't just take money from our accounts, she said. I took exactly half. Documentation has been provided to my lawyer, I replied. Tom, thinking he still had a part in this, tried to step in. Listen, man, these things happen. People make mistakes. I looked at him, almost amused. Really? Your wife has a surprise for you. That wiped the smirk off his face. I laughed then, bitter and sharp. 3 months of planning. Multiple hotel meetings. Secret messages. Elaborate cover stories. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign. I turned back to Michelle. The house remains untouched until the settlement. I'll be staying elsewhere. The keys and garage opener are on the kitchen counter. She began to cry, tears streaming without restraint. I couldn't tell if it was remorse or just the realization that her safety net was gone. Please, she said softly, we can work through this. I swallowed hard. We could have worked through problems. That opportunity ended in this hotel room. I started to leave, then stopped and asked the one thing I needed to know. Why? She said nothing. Just tears and silence. That's what I thought. I closed the door behind me. The click was quiet, but felt like a door slamming on 15 years of my life. In the elevator, I stopped the recorder and slid it back into my pocket. It was evidence I probably wouldn't need. The confrontation hadn't brought peace or satisfaction, just confirmation of what I already knew. 15 years ended in a hotel room, with a stranger watching. From my car, I called Mark, my oldest friend, the kind of guy who never asks for details until you're ready. Need a place to stay for a while? He asked the moment he picked up. Yeah, I said. Just need some space. Keys under the mat, he replied. No questions, no judgment. Later, over beers on his back porch, I'd tell him everything. But that night, all I wanted was silence. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts and calls from Michelle, pouring in like a flood she couldn't hold back. I didn't read most of them. What could she possibly say that would change anything? That first night, I slept better than I had in months. Maybe years. The indecision was over. The weight I didn't know I'd been carrying had lifted. The next morning, I was at my lawyer's office before the doors opened. We filed immediately. Michelle would be served at work later that day. A little poetic justice. Let her feel a fraction of the humiliation she'd dealt me. In the days that followed, my phone logged 37 missed calls and 64 text messages. They ranged from desperate apologies to angry threats. I didn't respond to any of them. Mark respected my space, but checked in just enough to keep me tethered. One day at a time, he told me over coffee. This'll pass. Simple words. But they helped. When I returned to work, I kept it brief with my boss. I'm going through a divorce. Might need some flexibility. He nodded. Take what you need. Let us know how to help. By that afternoon, Michelle's messages took a new turn. How could you do this to me at work? She wrote. You humiliated me. Another read. The papers say adultery. Now everyone knows. I'll fight you for everything. My lawyer soon called. She's retained counsel. They're coming in aggressive. Alimony, the house, half your retirement. I barely flinched. With the evidence we had, it was noise. A few weeks later, we stood in court. She showed up in her best version of pitiful, clinging to some fabricated story about emotional neglect and so-called mental abuse. Claimed the affair was a one-time thing. Said she was deeply remorseful. Wanted reconciliation. My lawyer calmly laid it all out. Months of hotel stays, overlapping timelines, pictures, receipts. The judge never let his expression betray anything, but when he ruled, it was firm. No alimony. Property split according to the law. House sold, assets divided. She stormed out without so much as a glance. That night, her sister called. Michelle's telling everyone you were abusive, she said. Do you believe her? I asked. There was a pause. Then, I've known you 15 years. That's not who you are. One ally in her camp. I hadn't expected it, but I appreciated it. Over the next week, friends who'd initially taken her side started to reach out. I'm sorry, one text read. I believed her without hearing your side. I didn't hold it against them. People make mistakes. Some just more devastating than others. The divorce process moved along like a machine set in motion. Clinical, deliberate, devoid of feeling. Property inventory became just a spreadsheet of a life dismantled. Asset valuations turned memories into numbers. Mediation sessions were conducted through attorneys like we were adversaries negotiating a ceasefire. Not once did Michelle and I speak directly. She sat across the room in sleek outfits, perfectly composed, while our lawyers dissected what was once a shared life. The house sold faster than expected, market was hot, and I was grateful. My half of the proceeds went toward a small downtown condo. Just one bedroom, minimalist, clean. No ghosts of arguments or faded photographs. 7 months after catching her in that hotel room, our 15-year marriage was dissolved in a courtroom session that lasted 23 minutes. Michelle showed up with a new haircut and wearing jewelry I'd never seen before. Her affair partner didn't bother showing. I later found out they ended things mid-divorce. Apparently, betrayal wasn't the strong foundation she thought it was. Around that time, I met Natalie, Tom's ex, for coffee. We both needed to close the door on that twisted chapter. How are you doing? She asked, gently. Getting better, I replied. You? Same. Moving to Miami next month. Need a fresh start. We exchanged soft smiles, the kind that only people who've been through similar storms can give. No bitterness. Just mutual understanding. Recovery came slowly, but it came. I picked up old hobbies, joined a bowling league, started painting again. I caught myself laughing more. And eventually, I walked into therapy. That hour a week peeled back layers I didn't realize existed. The therapist helped me see where I ignored warning signs, not to place blame, but to build better filters going forward. Your gut knew before your mind accepted it, she told me. Next time, trust that. One day, about a year after everything imploded, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about her, without replaying the betrayal. It felt like breathing clean air for the first time. By the 2-year mark, I dipped a toe into dating again. Carefully, I was upfront about what I'd been through, not as a shield, but as a filter. I didn't want pity, just honesty. And somewhere along the way, I discovered I could trust again. Not blindly, but wisely. Looking back now, the pain feels muted, distant. The experience changed me. I'm more grounded, less naive. My boundaries are firm. I see red flags faster. Some people ask if I regret the marriage. It's complicated. I regret the betrayal, the years wasted in blind loyalty. But I don't regret who I became after. I don't regret learning what it means to rebuild. The divorce taught me dignity isn't something you beg to keep. It's something you protect, even when it costs you everything else. And now life, unexpectedly, almost defiantly, feels better than before. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.